Welcome to Toccoa Church. My name is Alli, and I'm one of the lead pastors here at Toccoa, and I want to welcome you wherever you're joining us from. Whether that be online or at one of our neighborhood gatherings, welcome. Today we're continuing our series, Building Together, and Austin is going to be sharing about one of our values, to live, love, local. This is something that has been truly transformational in our family as we have been intentional in how we live and how we make decisions about where we live in our city. And so I want to encourage you to lean into what God has to share with you today. I think that God is going to encourage you as well in this message. Let's pray together before we hear from Pastor Austin. Lord God, we just thank you for our time together today. God, I thank you for the city of San Jose. I thank you for the communities and the neighborhoods that you've placed each of us in. And I pray today that you would open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to where you are calling us to be intentional in our lives. God, I just pray over Pastor Austin. I pray over the message that you have to share with our community. May your Holy Spirit just be present in all that we do. In your name, amen.
I always wanted to be known somewhere. You know, like the old saying from Cheers, this idea that you walk in, people know your name. People, I would go somewhere and the barista or the waiter, the bartender, whoever would just know that this is my name, this is what I like, and they would just have it ready for me because they knew me. The problem with that is I don't go out enough anywhere really to have that frequency that they would get to know who I was. But a little bit before COVID, this started happening. I really like coffee, and I started to get known at the coffee shop of, okay, this is, I think you like a latte, right? That's what you usually order. Kind of conversations that started to happen, and then COVID hit and coffee shops were not open in the same way anymore, and things changed. But the reason I bring that up is because there's not just a selfish value that kind of comes from me of, it would be cool if people knew who I was, but there's something deeper in that we can begin to have a reputation, and that can fuel the ministry that God has for us, the ministry He has for you in your life. Today, I want to continue our series that we're doing called Building Together. We're in this series where we're talking about who and what is our culture as a church. We're leading to our grand opening in September, where we will have a weekly large gathering, a weekly service that will all come together in one place. You can hear me preach live. We'll have live music and worship. We can all come together. We're building towards that. It's not something that just I am doing or a couple people are doing. This is a team of people that is coming together to do this. And so we're looking at what makes us unique, what is God's specific calling for our church, and who we are supposed to be. And today, I want to look at one of our values that we call live, love, local. And I want to look at that value, and it has to do with that reputation. It has to do with being known who we are. And it's talking about our value of living locally in the community, picking an area, having an area where we invest deeply in. The reason I want to talk about that is because not just as a value for the church, but I think as you can do some of this in your personal life, I think it is going to fuel and give you opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. Believe if you choose to invest deeply in an area of a couple square miles, the impact you can have in a year, especially if you pick and invest in the area where a group of people is also doing this along with you as a church. If we together invest in a specific area of a smaller area, and we invest heavily in that, both in our spiritual life and in our personal life, as we invest in that area, I think what God can do and what's going to happen in your life in a year even is going to be greater than what would happen in 10 years as you're just kind of spread out around the Bay Area, around the world. The impact you can have as you invest deeply is just a multiplier of what happens in one place. You've probably seen the logo on our shirts. We picked it for a reason. The Live, Love, Local logo of investing in our city. This is why we're even church planting, because we believe that the specific local community needs more churches. It's not that there aren't any churches in San Jose or the Bay Area, but more specific local communities need churches that are investing in the local community, and the impact that they can have locally is so much greater than you can have as you look at the overall bigger picture. Together, a bunch of local churches can have an impact to change and transform San Jose, the Bay Area, even the world by investing deeply small locally. It's why yesterday at our startup party, we picked Palermo restaurant to host the startup party. It was a ton of fun as we gathered together, ate some good food. But we picked that restaurant because it's right in the area that we have chosen as a church to invest in. And not that we just chose it, we felt like God has chosen it for us and called us to invest deeply in this area. And so we had the startup party there. We're going to have another one of these if you missed it or you had a great time and you know some people that you'd like to invite to the next one. We're going to do another one of these in July, but we picked that, not just a random spot, not the cheapest spot or the spot with the best food. I know it was a great spot for us, but we picked intentionally because of the location and where it was. People know this, realtors know this. When you're buying a house or selling a house, it's all about the location. When you're opening a restaurant, it's all about the location of where you are. In this series we're in about building together, today we're going to talk about living locally. And we're talking about this value. Now the value is live, love, local. We're going to focus on the live side of it today mostly. But we talked about having two values, a live local value and a love local value. And the more we talked about it, the more we said, you really can't separate these. Because by living locally, you are loving the community. By loving the community, you need to invest locally. And so we combine this into one value. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to look at how Jesus actually lived his life this way as well and invested deeply, and why I think as you do this, it's going to empower your life. It's going to empower the ministry, the purpose that God has given you, and it's going to unlock some things for you if you choose to invest deeply in a smaller area. Don't worry if you don't live in the direct area of the circle of the church that we have called to invest in. You can still be a part of Toccoa Church. You can still have a great influence. But I want you to think about what is the circle of influence God has called you to, and how can you invest deeply in that circle versus just any circle around the world. Back to coffee shops, I got to go on vacation with my family a week ago. We got to go down to Monterey. It was vacation for us. We have some friends that live down there, and they went on vacation for the week, and we got to stay in their house. And so this is just where they live every day, but for us it was vacation. It was time away. And as we got there, I began to look at I pulled up on my phone and I'm researching where are the best coffee shops for me to go to. I'm looking at their rating, how many stars do they have? I'm looking at the comments, I'm looking at the pictures. What do their latte art look like? What does their espresso machine look like? What does the coffee shop atmosphere, ambiance look like? Trying to find and pick the best ones. And I went to Carmel, I went to Monterey, I went to Pacific Grove, I went to Seaside, I went to all of these places each day to try a different coffee shop. It's vacation, it's what I like to do, and I really like a good cup of coffee. But locally here, it's different. See, I used to go wherever I felt like for the day and just try to mix it up and try different things. But before COVID, I started to invest and embody this value of living locally, and I started to invest more deeply. See, I chose in the area that we're investing in, I chose two coffee shops, and I chose Chromatic Coffee and I chose Pete's Coffee on the Alameda. And I said, these are the two I'm going to go to. And there's pros and cons to each of those spots and locations. And so depending on what the day needed, I'm going to choose these spots. And I love what it does. Even a couple weeks ago, I was meeting up with somebody at Chromatic Coffee, and I was sitting out there just sharing with them the vision of what we're doing as a church. And because of the amount of time I've spent in that spot, because of investing locally in the community, I see somebody driving by that's going to come up into that business complex that I know. And this is what happens when you begin to live locally and invest, is you start to increase the chances for the encounters you have. You start to increase the chances of God doing something because you notice that something's different, or you run into somebody, or the types of ministry opportunities present because of what happens there, because of that consistent manner of living locally. And here is what you need to know. As a church, we believe in a miraculous God that is leading us where he directs, and we believe as he calls a team of people, he calls you as well to be a part of what we are doing. He's directing you as well, that you can be a part of the story that God is writing for our church. He has been writing a story for our church. He's been writing a story in your life as well, and he wants to give you the opportunity to be a part of what he is doing for us as well. And I want you to have the opportunity to get in on the story that he is writing for Toccoa Church. And here's what I want you to know. No matter how you got here, no matter who you know, no matter where you live, if you love this city or hate this city, whether you are planning on getting out of here as soon as you can, leaving in a couple months, or you feel like this is where you're going to spend the rest of your life, it is not by random chance that God has called all of us here at this time and place to this city and this place and this church. He has a specific purpose for what he is doing. If I asked you why you are here, you could say many things. You could say that this is the place to make it. This is where the only job opportunity was. This is where my spouse's job opportunity was. So I moved here. Maybe you grew up here. Maybe it's the only opportunity you had. Maybe you love the weather, the access to the mountains and the outdoors and all of that. Or maybe you just love paying as much as possible for a place to live. I don't know why you are here, but God has called you here for a specific reason at this time. We have a potential to be a part of that bigger story that God is writing that's bigger than just you and me. The challenge is sometimes figuring out how do we be a part of those bigger stories that God is writing. And I know with my life that I want to make a difference with my life. I want to be a part of other people's stories and making a difference in their lives. My life can be a part of their journey as I begin to do and live out the ministry that God has called us to. As a church, our mission is to help connect people to God so they can find and live out their purpose. And today, I believe as you begin to live out our value of live, love, local, that you're going to supercharge that mission and supercharge the ministry and the purpose that God has for you and your life. In our day and age, it is so easy, especially when the pandemic is not going on, to live our life in 50 different places. That we can go somewhere different every weekend, that we can travel all the time, that we can just be in all these places. I can go to a different restaurant every night of the week. I can go to all of these different places and live in all of these different places. But there are some set parts of our life and some parts of our life that we get to choose. Now, some of the set parts of our lives we can also change, but they're more difficult. Some of those bigger areas of influence are our work, our home and family, our church. Those are bigger things. We can choose, you might move, things might change in your job. Those do change throughout life, but they're set. They're bigger things. The area I want to focus on today is that fourth area. And that's what do you do with the rest of your time in your life? Where do you go shopping? Where do you go to eat? Where do you spend your time that is outside of your home, outside of work? What do you do in those spaces? That's what I want to talk about, and I want you to look at today, the rest of your life, where you can choose to live, love, local. So as we jump into this, let's look at how Jesus did this, and I want to look at a phrase that multiple writers of the New Testament wrote about Jesus. And this is a good sign that this must have been something he was known by, because it wasn't just something one person said about him, but multiple people said this about him. The phrase I want to look at today is, as was his custom. As was his custom. This is what was said about Jesus. See, he was an itinerant preacher. That means he didn't have a home that he lived in and like a place where he worked and preached, like, maybe I would do today. But he went all around his country, moving around, traveling, despite the fact that he was moving all the time, something that isn't even said about probably almost all of us. We have specific places that we've invested in. Despite all of the moving that he did, he was still known to have a custom, a routine, a thing that he did. And because of that, it enabled him and enabled his ministry. So we're going to look at a couple of these verses to start off today. We're going to look at Mark 10 to start. And I love this passage in Mark 10 because we chose to use it at our wedding. We gave it to the pastor and said, you might not have preached on this before, but I would like you to preach on this, because later in the chapter Jesus talks about marriage. But the beginning verse says this, and he left there and went to the region of Judea and beyond the Jordan, and crowds gathered to him again. And again, as was his custom, he taught them. Out of Mark 10. See, Jesus would gather, he would go to these different places, but the crowd would know Jesus is in the area, he's coming, we're going to come together, and if we come together, we know that Jesus is going to teach us in this place, so we'll go to that place and wait to hear him teach. Also says in Luke chapter 4, and he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as was his custom, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. Luke says in another chapter, and he came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. Towards the end of his life, right before he goes to the crucifixion, he goes to this place, this garden on the Mount of Olives with his disciples. This is something that he would regularly do, retreat with them there in that place. See, Jesus had a routine in his life. You might like routine, you might hate routine, but he lived his life in his local community and impacted the world in a deeper way because of it. You don't have to do the same thing every day or every week. If routine isn't your thing, you don't have to do that. Too much routine can sometimes not be a good thing, but if you have no routine, if you have no custom, you are not building up something deeper, that something Jesus had as well. And my first point that I want to talk about today is that reputation matters. Reputation matters. People should know who we are, not just be a nameless face. And people knew Jesus. They knew where he was. They knew where his ministry was happening. They knew where to find him if they needed him. Do people know the same about you? Routine for ministry and life can have huge implications. I know in the past, because I've even picked the same coffee shops to work, even when I didn't live in San Jose, I started to build a routine, and I even had some people that I was starting to do life with. And that's one of our other values here as a church, that we do life together. We don't do it alone. So some people started to know, okay, this is where Austin would be. Sometimes I would invite them, sometimes I wouldn't, but they would know, okay, they had some time from work where they could be flexible. They would come to the same place to work alongside me. We could do life together. We could hang out. That was in the same place that discipleship happened. That's another one of our values as a church, that we disciple one another. And that would happen in those places because there was a reputation, that people would know that that's where I was doing ministry, that's where I was living out my life. People knew where to find me. People knew where to find Jesus as well. Because of his routine, people began to find him there, and it opened up ministry opportunities because of him. And so it matters for us, not just physically where we live out our lives, but digitally as well. Where do we spend our lives? Those are two areas that I want you to think about today. How are you living and investing online? How are you living and investing locally? How are you engaging in those ways? Where do you spend your free time? Where do you spend your money? Which parks do you go to? Where do you go on hikes? Where do you go to restaurants? Where do you go? Some of the just more basic everyday needs. Where do you go to the grocery store? Now, I think this is extra important right now. I've talked on this similar topic before because it's such a value for our church, but right now there's also an opportunity for us. See, life is starting to open up again, and things are starting to open up. And you have this chance of, where do you spend your time and your life? Do you decide things are open, I'm just going to go again every weekend, I'm going to travel all the time, I'm going to go all over the Bay Area to all these places that I've wanted to go to that I haven't been able to go to for the last year? Or do you choose to live locally? Now, I just went on a vacation. Vacation can be a great thing as well. Not that you have to do this every single time, always from the year, and you can't go around, you can't go out, but think about, how do you intentionally invest in your community as things open up? Now that you're setting new habits, new routines as things are open and available, are you setting them just wherever you want to go, or do you choose a place like Alli and I, and as a church that we've chosen, of this is where we're going to live and invest as deeply as possible? When we pick our doctor, when we pick our mechanic, when we pick date night, when we pick the coffee shop to go to, these are the places, and it's all in the same area. And because of that, we're investing in that local area, and we're building something because of it, and it allows us to have more ministry opportunities because of it. It supercharges what God can do. And so I want to challenge you, be intentional about where you choose, and this is going to allow you to build a reputation. I shared part of this story a long time ago, but one of the ways we've done this as a family, and actually Alli has done this, she's done this with where we go grocery shopping. And she would go to the same time of week. She liked to do her grocery shopping, and so she would go at the same day and the same time to the same store every week. She got to know who's at the butcher counter, who's at the checkout counter, who's stocking the store. And even at the checkout counter, she began to choose, you know what, I'm going to intentionally go to the same cashier every time. It doesn't matter if the line's longer or the line's shorter at that person. I'm not going to try to game the system. I'm going to intentionally go and start to know that person's name and build a reputation and get to know who they are. Now, we moved to a new home and a new place, and so we picked a new grocery store, and she picked a new place to go, but the same thing of how do I be intentional about continuing to invest in the same place with the same people and get to know them. I can see when they're having a bad day and I might be able to offer them some encouragement. I can share about life. I might be able to get to invite them to the next startup party we're doing as a church or whatever we're doing because of the relationships I get to build by intentionally living locally and living in the same place. So build your reputation by choosing to live local. It's one of the things we did even as a church. Last year, we were at the farmers market every week to live locally, build some of those local relationships in the community. So choose to live local and build your reputation from them. The other thing I want to share about is to be ready for interruptions. And I think as we build a routine like this, it enables this. Because if there's no routine, there's not an interruption because everything is an interruption. But as we build a routine, we can be ready for interruptions. And there's another phrase that I would see in the New Testament as I'm reading it, and it's called while on his way. While on Jesus' way, this happened, ministry would happen, life would happen, or as the disciples were going and on their way. I want to look at quickly Acts chapter 3, and I'll just read the first verse of this. It's now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. See, they had a custom, they had a routine. They would go to the temple just as Jesus did on the Sabbaths. And they would go, and on the way, they noticed somebody that was in need. They called out to them for help. And instead of just saying, hey, I'm on my way to church, I got to get there, they said, wait, this person is in need. Let me stop and see what I can do for them. And they prayed for them. And they prayed that God would heal them. And God began to do a miracle through them and in this situation because they stopped on the way. They noticed something different. See, while we're on our way, it's like when I was sharing at the checkout person at the grocery store, that we would know that the cashier was having a different kind of day and they needed some encouragement, or we saw this person that we've never seen before and realized, hey, they might need some encouragement, or they might get to share with us that while on the way, we can be ready for interruptions. Ministry happens in the middle of our life. The more that we're ready for it, the more that God can do. And this is part of how we live out our calling in our life, is to just be ready as we're investing in an area. We live out our calling while having a business transaction. We can be ready. It's like while I was at that coffee shop a couple of weeks ago, that I'm there intentionally meeting with somebody, but I see somebody else that's coming in that I know that I can stop intentionally and have a relationship with. The more we choose to live in a place and invest in a place, the more opportunity it is for encounters like that to happen, and for us to be ready that while we're on our way or while we're doing something, that those occur and those happen. As we finish our time together today, there's two strategies we've had this summer for things that we're doing in the community. Part of that are community barbecues that we're intentionally taking some Sundays off this summer, and we're hosting some. I'm also encouraging you to host some of these barbecues. And one of the other strategies we're doing is to serve our community, to love locally, to invest in the community. And July 4th was another one of those that was coming up, and we decided to change our plans of what we're doing because there was an opportunity that came up from the community. We were going to have a barbecue on Sunday instead of service to build relationships and community with those around us. And it's still great. I would still encourage you to either go to one. I know we have some that later in the afternoon, somebody's invited us to in the neighborhood, in the community. Let's go to that, invest in those relationships. And out of that, we can share the gospel with these people. We can invite them to Tekoa and what we're doing. But we also want to invest in the community. We're going to do our own event to serve the community, but then we heard about this other event that was happening in the community. Normally it's a parade. It was canceled last year. This year they're doing a little bit of a different format, but they just got the green light as things opened up to hold this event. And it's local. It's right in the community on the Alameda where we're investing as a church. And they said, hey, we need some people to help us with setup and tear down and just during the event. And we're going to try to have a booth there as well, just to connect with people in the community. But we're going to combine these because the opportunity presented itself. So instead of just doing barbecues on the 4th of July, we're going to have this serve event. I encourage you, go right on our Connect page on the website, and you can sign up for that if you're here for 4th of July, if you're traveling or you can't be here. That happens. That's life. But I want to encourage you, if you have the opportunity, the time, come be a part of serving the city with us, be a part of living, loving locally for this. And then think about this summer, how can you invest in some of these barbecues and other things we're doing? It's not just we like eating food and having a barbecue, but they're an intentional thing we're doing to live locally. We're inviting our local community. We're loving them by hosting, giving food, and just hosting and having a great time. But this is something we're doing intentionally as a church this summer. When you have a custom, a routine, when you've chosen to invest locally in a specific area and community, it opens up opportunities for you to live out your purpose and why God has called you here to this place. I know that I've opted to choose from just finding the highest rated starred thing online to how do I invest in a specific community? When I had to pick a new doctor, when I choose where am I going to take Alli on date night, when we needed a new mechanic for the car, when we choose these things, we choose to invest locally in the community as much as possible. And God has begun to open up ministry opportunities because of that. And I believe if you choose to do the same, if you choose to invest in a local community around you, invest deeply in that, you're going to start to see God do some incredible things through your life and the opportunities that you get because of that investment you would have never seen if you just were randomly walking through and living through life. As we live local, Jesus did this. It was as his custom. People knew. Because of the reputation, people knew where to find him. Reputation matters. I know people in our church, I've heard this story from many people that at their work, they started to get a reputation for being a Christian. And in a good way, that when people needed something, especially when they needed prayer and life was happening, something came up. So I know that this person is a Christian and I know that they've offered to pray before. And so I'm going to go to them and ask for prayer. I don't know if I believe in God at this point in time, but I need prayer for my family member or for me. And what can it hurt? If God is real, then I need the prayer. If he's not, then what's going to be the negative of this? Because they built a reputation. They invested in their workplace and they invested in their community. They began to be known for who they were, who God had called them to be. And people knew that they were somebody that would care for them, that wouldn't judge them, and that would pray for them. Build your reputation. Choose to live local. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your resources? God is writing your story. How can you choose to live local in the middle of that? I'm going to pray and invite you to pray with me that our church would be known for this, that we'd be known by our community. Part of our vision, part of what we would love to be known by is that we would be the place in the community that if something happened, if somebody needed help, they would know that everybody is welcome at Toccoa Church and that those people care about them. We do that and we start to do that by live, love, local. So would you pray with me that this would be a part of who we are as a church? God, I pray for our church and what we're doing. I pray that you would build your kingdom partly through what you're doing through Toccoa Church. And I pray that we would be known by this reality, that we'd be a people that live locally, that we'd be people that love locally, that we would be known and have a reputation as a people that care for our community, that when somebody's in need, that they would turn to us because they know we care about the community because we've invested deeply in the community. I pray for our church that as you've called them to their homes, their neighborhoods, their workplaces, Lord, in this church, Lord, I pray that you would empower them to live in their community. You would empower them to have ministry opportunities to share the good news of what you are offering, Lord, new life through you and your gospel. God, I pray that you would empower our church and who we are right now. I pray as well, and I want to invite anybody that's listening to us right now, that's joining us, participating in service today, if you want that for your life, if you say, I want to know who Jesus is, I want you to invite you to pray with me right now to trust him. Jesus is saying, I love you and I give my life for you. And he just wants you to trust in him and put your faith in him. So if anybody wants to do that, pray. As we pray together right now, just pray this prayer with me. Jesus, I trust you with my life. I love you. And I know that you gave your life for me, and I choose to live my life for you and choose to accept what you have done for me. Amen. I'm grateful for all that God is doing through Toccoa Church. I'm so excited for what He's doing this summer as we build towards our launch this September, our grand opening that's coming in September. I'm grateful for all of you that are a part of our team, a part of what God is doing in our church. And I am excited, and I believe that as we as a church and as a community choose together to invest deeply, to live locally in our community, that God is going to continue doing amazing things, that there are going to be some great opportunities that present themselves even this summer, this fall, as we invest in the community.
What a great message from Pastor Austin on how we can live, love local. And it made me think about how that's something that we've done in our family, that we've tried to be really intentional about thinking even where we go around our community. And it might seem like a small change that we recently made, but recently Austin and I changed our dentist to be closer to our home. We had a new dental office open up down the street, and so we decided to change our dentist to there. And we also have our eye doctor that's within walking distance as well. So it's really convenient whenever we have to go to the doctor. But it's something that not only is more convenient, but it's something that we've tried to be intentional about because it helps us be invested in our neighborhood and what's going on and build relationships with those around us. And so I would just encourage you this week to think through what are ways that God is calling you to live, love local in your life. Are there any changes that you need to make? You know, it may not be that you have to change all your doctors or anything like that, but just thinking through ways that God wants to maybe press you and push you to live, love local. Also, right now, I want to invite you to complete the Toccoa card. You can do that by going to our Connect page. And this is something that we do each week as a community because we truly want to hear from you and know what's going on in your life, how we can support you. So you can fill that out now. Let us know any prayer requests you have. And you can also let us know if there's any way that we can support you in your spiritual journey. We're going to take some time right now as well to worship God through our giving. And this is a time for us to just stop and be grateful, to thank God for the finances that He has provided in our life, whether that might seem like a lot or a little, to just stop and give thanks and to give back to God. It's because of your generosity that we've been able to host different events in our community and to live out that value to live, love local. And so last night we were able to have our first startup party at Palermo's restaurant, and it was such a great event, getting to connect with people in our community, getting to hear from people and hear more about their stories. People who don't know Jesus, people who've been disconnected from church, all got to come together and hear more about our church and also get to build relationships and do life together. And so it's because of your generosity that we get to host events like that. And so I want to thank you and encourage you now to worship God through your giving. We also want to let you know about another opportunity we have next Sunday on 4th of July to come together and live out that value to live, love local. We are going to be serving at the Rose, White, and Blue Parade on the Alameda next Sunday, July 4th. And you can find out more information on our website on how to sign up. But I really encourage you to be part of this event. Austin and I are going to be there, and it's going to be a fun day of getting to listen to music and see some cool cars, but also to just come together as a church and really serve and love our community. When we reached out to let the community know, the city know that we wanted to volunteer, they were so excited to hear that there were people that wanted to come alongside them and serve and partner with them. And so I encourage you now, let us know that you want to be part of that event. You can sign up today so that we can let them know who's going to be coming and that they can plan accordingly. As a reminder, next Sunday, we won't be having our normal services because we're encouraging you to be part of this event or to be part of other events in our community, to host a barbecue, to go to a barbecue, to live out that value to live in your community. So we won't see you next week online or at our normal neighborhood gathering, but we invite you back the following week, and we look forward to seeing you in one of our community events. Bye, everyone.
Hi, I'm Daniel. Thank you for joining us for service today. If you're watching live online, I'd like to invite you to join our discussion group that starts right now. You should find a link in the description box. It will be either above or below the screen you're watching right now. So join us in a few minutes. We'll have some time to chat about the message, get to know each other a little bit. See you soon.